The way we're going to do this is we're going to have a combination of slides and demonstrations. So I'm going to be live in the Crash Data Viewer, taking you through a whole series of demos and illustrating how to do things. It's really intended to be a training course at its core. As Andrew said, Gary and I are, sort of leading this effort and have been working with DOT for many years. We were involved heavily in the development of the original ALICE system and the support of that system and the retooling of that over the years. And now we've been working for the last 3 years on this new state-of-the-art solution that we refer to as CLEAR. And we're going to take you through what CLEAR is and what we've been doing over the last few years and the status and so on. But essentially, CLEAR will replace ALICE and many other applications as well. And so we'll take you through that a little bit, but we've been at this for a very long time and have been, are intimately familiar with all the crash data and the safety analysis solutions that are required and so on. So in terms of the logistics, I will be doing all the training. You'll hear my voice and so on for the next couple of hours here. Gary Stevens, who is the solutions architect for this, is going to man the chat. So as Andrew said, if everybody could please turn off your webcam and video right now, that'd be great. I see there's a few that are on. If you could please turn that off, that would be great. Also, we're going to mute you for the entire time, and we're going to open up the mics at the end for Q&A. But in the meantime, what we're going to do is if you have a question that you want to ask right then, Gary will be answering the questions in chat. So feel free to go ahead and ask a question in chat. Gary will respond right away. And essentially what we'll do is we'll have that captured. If we don't have time to get to it, or if Gary wants to open it up, we can answer that in the group setting at the end as well. There's a lot of text on the slides. We have a lot of material to cover, so don't worry if you miss something. What we're going to do is we're going to record this session, as you probably heard already. We're going to provide you with a copy of the slides. We're going to provide you a copy of the recording as a MP4 file, and I'm going to timestamp it so that we see what's going on in terms of that at 2 minutes and 17 seconds is when we're talking about this topic. So you can very easily use this MP4 file in the video as a reference material. You can go back and watch certain sections of it again. So we'll provide you with a lot of training materials to go along with this after the session's over. I'm a typical New Yorker. I talk pretty quickly, so I apologize in advance. I'll try to slow myself down. It's very easy to get going at a pretty quick pace when you have a lot of material to cover, but I'll try to slow myself down the best I can. This is just the first class of CLEAR. So as you'll see in a moment, CLEAR is a series of applications. It's an entire solution platform. So please be cognizant that this is just one class. For those of you that are into the safety analysis, if there's any SEEs on here or so on, please be aware this is not the CLEAR safety app, which is one of the apps that really focuses on the safety end of things. This is just the crash data viewer, which is a generic viewer for query visualizing and analyzing crash data. And if anybody sees any data that doesn't make sense or so on, obviously this system is going to be this one where we can edit and cleanse the data over time, so we can both relocate crashes with other applications. This application I'll refer to called ICE, the Interactive Crash Editor. So this is really a holistic platform to be able to evolve data and cleanse it with both DOT and their partners over time. So without further ado, let me just take you through the agenda of what we're going to do. So these first few minutes, we're going to just do a little bit of an overview of CLEAR and what it is. We're going to then get into the application overview and some of the high-level things of what the CDV, as you'll hear me call it, the CLEAR Crash Data Viewer, CDV. I'll take you through the overview of what the application looks like, the dashboards report, some sort of general functionality. We'll get into some basic queries, and then we'll introduce you to the advanced queries. And then about 10:20 or so, somewhere in the 10:20 to 10:30 range, we'll take a 10-minute break. Then when we come back, we'll take a real deep dive into advanced queries, into the really hardcore type of analysis you can do. We'll talk about exporting the results, saving and managing and sharing queries with one another, and then generating batch reports where we use this sister application that's built into CDV called the Crash Report Viewer to be able to bundle up and say maybe we have 15 different crashes or cases that we want to put into a consolidated PDF file and put all the crash reports, the original crash reports from law enforcement into a PDF file. That's a really one of the most requested pieces of functionality I think we've got throughout this, and that is built into this. And then at the end, we'll open it up for 10 to 15 minutes of questions that we may not have got to, or any final questions in a final Q&A and wrap-up session. So with that said, once again, I'd advise folks, if you could turn off your videos to your webcams, that would be great. Saves on some bandwidth and the way the recording will go. Thank you. What we'll do here is just start off with a couple of basic slides. So as Andrew said, what is clear? It's really this new state-of-the-art spatially enabled. And what I mean by spatially enabled, you'll see a lot of interactive maps, much like Alice if you've used those solutions. It is very map-centric. There is a lot of power from the geospatial end of things, and it's really at its core both a crash analysis and management system, but also really it was built as a safety information management system. It's a comprehensive enterprise-wide solution. What I mean by that is it'll be able to be used throughout DOT as an organization, but it'll also really be out with all the partners, whether it be counties, municipalities, MPOs, DMV, another partner organization at the state agency level. All of that. So when we talk about enterprise-wide, that's what we mean. It's really organization-wide. It's really comprehensive, and it's going to replace these three applications. It's going to retire essentially all of the modules that are part of Alice. It's going to retire SIMS, which is an internal DOT system, and PIEs, which is doing safety evaluations on safety improvements that have occurred and evaluating their effectiveness. So all three of those are going to be replaced by all these modules. As I mentioned, we've been sort of at this design and development over the past 3 years, so it's been a long haul for us. It's come out great. We're really pleased with where we're at, and we'll be rolling this out over the next few months. The first phase, as you'll see on the status slide, coming out here in a matter of just a few weeks. The original project goals, just to revisit this, it was sort of holistic. First of all, clear. This system was meant to, improving roadway safety and implementing sound traffic engineering and basically saving lives, preventing crashes, and reducing reducing injuries and so on. But that's a very holistic, that's almost like a mission statement of one of the mission statements of DOT in general. But in order to do that, what we did is we had our safety organization, and some of you may know Frank Gross, who is our lead safety, who leads our safety group here at VHB. He's a nationally recognized transportation safety expert, working with the federal government and many state DOTs. Frank and his team conducted a thorough review of all New York State DOT safety data programs and evaluated business processes and performance measures. And that whole review and re-engineering of some of the processes has found its way into one or more of these applications. So that was part of the goal. It wasn't just to build a system, it was to reevaluate everything and make improvements, and we think we've done that. Also, the Highway Data Services Group have been working for a number of years on implementing a new linear referencing system, the statewide enterprise milepoint LRS. So we had to transition to that, which we have done. Drilling down a level, some of the key functional objectives. We obviously needed to continue to have a system for accurately geocoding crash locations. So we do this very similar to Alice, quite honestly. We have a more comprehensive and more robust geocoding engine that we use to geocode crashes, the locations based on all the data on the location section of the MV104 form. So we have a batch processing every night. We pull all the latest crash data over from DMV, from the AIS system. So we pull that over, all new and updated crash data. We try to geocode them in batch. So if we have 500 crashes that came over from the night before, we run them through, and maybe we'll geocode 400 or so of those in an automated fashion, and the other 100 or so may go to an interactive queue that DMV location coders use this new application called Interactive Crash Locator, or ICL, that I'll mention in a minute, and then they go through and they interactively process any of the ones that weren't able to be done in an automated fashion overnight. We wanted to make sure that we have the ability to manage and edit crash data. So we have another application called ICE, the Interactive Crash Editor, that allows you to edit and relocate crashes and so on. We wanted to be able to manage this statewide intersection inventory. Now, what is that? Well, one of the things that have fallen out of this whole project over the last several years is DOT has created what we would call a statewide intersection inventory. Now, it's more than just, where do two roads intersect, for example. It is every intersection across the state is captured with a whole series of attributes, and it starts at a holistic level where you might have a complex intersection like a roundabout, and the whole intersection is considered an intersection, the whole roundabout, and then all the different legs and points of gore, if you will, of where the legs intersect with the roundabout and so on. Every one of those is captured spatially with characteristics about it, about what type of leg it is. Is it coming in? Is it going out? Is it a how many vehicles are entering, and so on. And we have all these attributes, and I'll show you this, but we have captured this over the years. I should say DOT has, in a separate effort, has captured this master intersection inventory across the state, and every one of these intersections has a boundary, a polygon feature, which is what we call the area of influence around that, of what would be deemed an intersection-related crash. And that can be used to select crashes, to analyze the safety aspects of things and the clear safety application, as we'll get to in a minute. But this intersection inventory is a very, very, very powerful system. This whole thing will be the query and visualization of an analysis of crash data, this is the heart of this bullet right here, is the heart of the crash data viewer of CDV. So you're going to see just a lot of examples of this today. We wanted to provide a robust safety solution for the Highway Safety Manual, or the HSM process. That's really the Clear Safety app that I'll talk about in a moment. We needed to integrate with the DMV AIS system and integrate with other DOT systems such as OPPM, where capital project data is. Real quickly, just an overview of some of the key end user applications that you're going to see. So we're here talking about this third row here, the Crash Data Viewer, which really replaces the SQRA app in Alice. This will be used by DOT, partner agencies, counties, municipalities, MPOs, etc. Up top here, though, there's two other applications that I mentioned briefly on the last slide. The Interactive Crash Locator really replaces the LCDE app from Alice, and it'll be used by DMV. By the location coders and supervisors, and ICE, which will be basically a replacement for the location editing application, will be used by anybody that has editing privileges, including DOT and the partner agencies. And then the application that is really, really the largest of this whole group and then the most powerful is the Clear Safety app, which is basically an app for safety professionals, SEEs at DOT, MPOs, et cetera, that are really analyzing the crashes and trying to identify areas where there's safety concerns, where there's areas for improvement, and then to be able to design countermeasures and specific improvements to address those safety concerns. So basically what we'll have here is this basically replaces all of these applications, Alice, SIMS, PIEs, etc. There's a couple back-end administrative applications. This intersection inventory manager, as I mentioned, that helps manage the intersection inventory across the state, and then an administrative module for Clear itself. A couple of key data sets in Clear here. The crash data, obviously, we're migrating right now, 2007 to present. So crash data is coming from a couple of different sources, DMV, DOT, the crash report images and diagrams. So we have access to all of these through the FileNet system and others. So we're pulling all that stuff live. The road data network, as I mentioned, DOT Highway Data Services. We have a statewide roadway network with the linear referencing system. We're accessing capital project data through OPPM. We are actually generating work orders and work requests in the Agile system, Agile Assets here at DOT. As I mentioned, the statewide intersection inventory, and there's a whole variety of other geospatial reference data that we're using. So final slide on the overview of Clear here. What's the status and what's the road ahead? Well, right now we are wrapping up what we call phase 1 deployment. This is basically trying to replace all the Alice applications. We're looking at about a mid to late January release here. It's really all of these applications, many of which I just mentioned, but there's a couple of other little smaller pieces in here. I'm going to demo the crash report viewer to you as part of this as well. But all of this is involved with phase 1. And now you can see this final bullet is we're underway with some of the training for these end user applications. First one is this crash data viewer, and then we'll be doing other application training for ICL and ICE and Clear Admin. Once we successfully launch all these Alice replacement modules and can essentially retire Alice, and I had questions in the last version of this training class where when I started talking about replacing Alice and people asked, well, when is Alice going to go away or get turned off? The crash data ingestion part of Alice, like LCDE and geocoding crashes, the things that DMV does, that is going to be turned off when we launch. So in this mid to late January timeframe, Alice modules such as LCDE and LE and so on, they're going to be turned off. There will be no more new data, new crash data coming to Alice. We will flip the switch and all the crash data will be coming into Clear. So SQRA as an app, however, will be left up for some time. Exactly when we haven't determined. I think it's going to be a little bit of a conversation with Andrew and others from DOT with the users. But essentially, you will still have access to SQRA if you're continuing to do an investigation or you're doing some analysis that you were in the middle of. That won't go away, but there will be no more new crash data coming into Alice right around, just say, late January, for example. We will give you heads up when that exact date is of when Alice is going to be turned off, but when we say Alice replacement, that's what we mean. LCDE, LE, all the new crash data will cease coming into Alice. It will be coming into Clear, and you'll need to transition over to that. So basically, as I mentioned, this training here for the crash data viewer, this is essentially replacing the SQRA app. So you'll have all the data that you had before and all the new data here. So we would strongly advise everybody to move over to use Clear on day one when it's available, except for any legacy projects you may have going on or analyses, right? And then phase two is going to be all about safety with the Clear Safety app, the network screening engine, the intersection inventory, and the training for these will begin in March. So we're going to be wrapping up our training for all these end user applications by early to mid-January, and then we'll shift over and focus on deploying phase two. So that's a little bit about Clear, the road ahead. So hopefully that makes sense. What I'd like to do is sort of just take you through sort of some of this application overview stuff now and dive into the crash data viewer itself. So we will be giving you a URL when this goes live to the production version of the crash data viewer. I'm going to be demoing off of one of our development servers here. And essentially when you hit that URL, this is all browser-based applications. Everything I've discussed here just runs in a browser. There's nothing to install. It runs on all the common browsers. And when I say common or modern, that's the typical term we use. This is not going to run in IE version 6, right, from many, many years ago. This is going to run in Edge and Chrome and Firefox at a high resolution. It's really recommended that you use this at a fairly high resolution and in one of these supported browsers. Which is, sort of the standard par for the course these days. When you first log in and you hit the URL that you'll be provided, you will have a landing page that you hit. The landing page that you see here will also have woven into it on the production release. It's not here on the development release, but on the production release, there will be an acceptance of the Driver's Privacy Protection Act policy. So you'll sort of have a little disclaimer, if you will, to click through and acknowledge that Protection Act. Andrew can address any questions when we open it up to Q&A later. You can ping them on the side, but essentially that will be there in the production release. When we hit the landing page, essentially to log into CDV, you just click this button to launch it. It says down here, what's going to happen is you're going to get redirected to ny.gov. So all of these applications are using the ny.gov identity provider. So just like you do with many other applications, you'll get redirected over there. You'll log in with your credentials. And once you're authenticated, it will redirect you back to the crash data viewer and you'll come to the actual application page. The application page after you log in looks like this. And I'll just take you through some of the sections of this layout. Essentially what we've got here is about 5 main sections. And up top here is the application header. It just has the title of the application, the DOT logo, and a few other miscellaneous tools that I'll take you through in a moment. On the left here is the sidebar menu. The sidebar navigation menu is the main menu of the system, and it is pretty much collapsible by this upper left, in the upper right-hand corner, this double less than sign, so to speak. And I'll show you that in a minute, but this entire menu oftentimes stays collapsed. The next section is the query form. This is where the panel exists for most of the dialogues around building your queries or setting your parameters for how you want to retrieve the data. So the interface that you're going to interact with is here a lot. This is also collapsible. So you see this gray band that's vertical up here. If you click this, it will collapse the query form so you can make the map window and what we call the query results grid that much bigger. Up here at the top is the interactive map. This is fully interactive. It is totally dynamically interfaced or intertwined with this query results grid. The query results grid is where it's essentially a tabular grid display of all the selected crashes that met your query criteria. And so what I mean by it being dynamically interactive between the two is that if you highlight a crash here, you'll see the point location of the crash highlight up here, and you can zoom to that crash, and we'll take you through some of these controls as well. But if you have down here, if you can read this screenshot, it says there are 28 records. There would be 28 corresponding points being shown in the map window up here, and you can interact between the two. Okay, so those are the 5 sections basically. I mentioned a couple of miscellaneous functions in the upper right. Nothing too earth-shattering here, but if you click the About, it displays the version number and release of that particular version of CDV to you in a pop-up dialog. What's that useful for? Well, if you found an issue with the application, which we hope you won't, but if you do, you basically could ping and give some feedback to DOT and say, hey, I found this, and can you take a peek at this? Ideally, what they would ask you for is, well, what version? Because you might have done this 2 weeks ago, and we've already updated the application, which would be live, and it's already fixed or something like that. The online help, you click that, it displays a pop-up window, in a separate browser tab. It displays the online help. It's searchable. It's got a whole table of contents. It'll give a lot of the information that I'm going to tell you about today in online help. Sort of the most important pieces of online help will be in these frequently asked questions. And then as we get questions, we'll keep adding to the frequently asked questions database. And it is searchable, but it's a little more condensed version. It's not a full online help system. So if you're sort of like, this seems like something everybody would ask, go here first and you might see it. And then over here, there is just a little thing that shows who you're logged in as. You can log out by going to sign out. And then there's a couple of preferences. There's grid preferences. There's default result fields. You can clear all of that by just clicking that clear preferences button, and it would do that. Okay, map window tools and navigation. So for those of you that have been in any type of mapping application, such as Google Maps or any of this is an Esri-based mapping interface. You might be familiar with some of this, but I'm going to assume that people haven't had any experience with that. So I'm going to go to the least common denominator and take you through all of it. So essentially what you see here is that we've got a series of tools on the left, a series of tools on the right. We've got a little full screen guy down here in the lower right, and we've got a find address bar up here. So top to bottom, first of all, if you type anything into this find address, it can be an address, it could be a place, a municipality, a city, it can be a landmark, it can be Yankee Stadium, it would zoom you to that, but you can type anything in here. A lot of times as you start typing, it will give you suggestions, so you don't even have to finish what you're typing often, and you'll be able to find it and click it. If you do type the entire word or phrase, you just click the little magnifying glass and it will automatically zoom you to the feature or location that you input. Zoom in and zoom out. These are, I don't know if I've ever clicked these, to be honest with you. They're there by default, but it's just zooming in by a factor of 2 and zooming out by a factor of 2. That's all it is. Down here below, I'll talk about these hidden map navigation functions. 98.9% of the time, I drag a rectangle to zoom in. It's what gets you there the closest and the fastest. So if you hold the shift key while you drag a rectangle, so hopefully you can see my mouse, if I were to hold my shift key and drag a rectangle like this from either upper left to lower right or the opposite. Some people go the other way and they go from lower left to upper right. Anyway, you drag opposite ends, corners of a rectangle, and it will zoom you to that exact extent. Okay. Also, the bottom bullet here is that you can use the mouse wheel. So if you have a mouse wheel, if you roll it forward, it zooms you in. Very fluid, dynamic type of zoom, and if you roll it back, it'll zoom you out. That is how I zoom in. I do not use these buttons. If you wanted to just zoom back to the extent of New York State, you click this little home button. It goes back to the default map view. These two buttons, I'll show you these. These are toggle buttons. They stay on until you turn them off. And it is basically for Bing Maps and Google Maps. If you turn them on and you click anywhere in the map, it will pop up in a separate browser tab. Bing Maps, which gives you an oblique aerial photograph. So it'll basically be about a 45-degree angle. If you've seen that type of imagery, instead of vertically down, which is a typical aerial photograph, it'll be oblique. Google Maps will open Street View, the Google Street View. So these are really handy for doing something like, getting sort of a virtual tour of the area and getting an idea of what's going on in the real world. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Then the print button will allow you to get to a print function. I'll show you that and print the map as a PDF or as a JPEG or something. You can add cartographic elements, or you can do the map only, scale bars, north arrows, etc. Put a title on it. You can do all that, and I'll show you what that looks like. On the right, we got a base map gallery. So we default to using OpenStreetMaps as a base map. We can click that and change it to the orthophotos. We can change it to any number of different base maps. Layer list lets you turn on and off features. We have a whole series of layers. Some are reference layers. Some are used actively by CDV, such as showing the crash locations and the selected crash locations. We can turn those on. Legend is just the symbology of the visible layers. Area measurement and the bottom one for distance let you measure the area of a polygon or a distance along a line, and I'll show you those. And then coordinate conversion allows you to click anywhere and tell you where those coordinates are in, say, latitude, longitude, or UTM, or state plane, etc. And that's sort of this group of tools up here. The final one that's probably underutilized is that the full screen. And the full screen allows you is that the full screen function allows you to sort of display the entire application, the window, sorry, the map window. The map window will be able, and it's easier if I just show you, it takes over the entire screen. So essentially what it does is it'll, pop the entire map open, and then all you gotta do is hit the escape key and it goes away, okay? Finally, the last thing that I didn't talk about here is recentering the map. So if you hold down the left button while you drag the map in any area, it will recenter the map and just pan that. Here's an important point, though. If you're in the middle of digitizing, let's say you're drawing something with the measurement tool, or you're drawing a polygon when we get to the draw tools, the panning of the map can be done at the same time you're in the middle of an operation of digitizing or tracing something. It knows the difference between you pressing and holding down the left button versus clicking it. So pressing and holding is an entirely different mouse operation. So it recognizes that. So if I was trying to trace a line and I'm going across my screen like this, and I get to the edge and I need to keep going, but I can't see it, even though it's waiting for me to digitize the next point, if I just press and hold my mouse button and slide it this way, I would pan the map, and then I'd be able to continue on tracing. So that's something that I'll show you here in a moment. Okay. All right. I'm going to take you through a little bit of a demo there, and I'll come back to the dashboard. So I'm going to hit escape right there, and let's go in and just demo a little bit of this basic stuff here with the crash data viewer and show you some of the map stuff. So here I am. Now I've already logged in and refreshed it. So when I click this, I'm not going to get redirected to ny.gov. This is going to, oh, it did. Oh, great. Perfect. So this is how we log in. We are coming in and we're using built-in logins. So I'm logging in. I'm not using ny.gov. So imagine that screen being replaced by the ny.gov redirect, okay? So when you log in, that's what you're going to see. You're going to go to ny.gov as opposed to that screen, but once you do, here's the application window as we were talking about in the overview. So right here, I've got the crash data viewer here. What I've got is I've got the crash data viewer heading bar here. These are those little couple miscellaneous application tools up here that I was talking about. This is the sidebar menu. The sidebar menu over here is fully collapsible. It comes up, and by default, it is collapsed. So if you want to see it, you just expand and collapse it. This is the query form. Once again, we can collapse that and make all of this larger. So that's fully collapsible and expandable. Down here, we'll come back to this. This is the query results panel, which by default, it also collapses. So although I didn't really reference that as collapsible, it does. And then we've got our map display, right? So let me just take you through a little bit of the map navigation stuff here. So once again, if I click plus, it's just walking me in by a factor of 2, and minus will walk me out by a factor of 2, right? If I want to zoom back to full New York State, I click the home button and it takes me back. If I want to go, and I'm going to drag a rectangle, right? I'm holding my shift key right now and dragging a rectangle, and notice how it automatically zooms me in. I click and hold, I'm holding my shift key while I drag this, and it zooms me in again. So now if I said, well, what I want to do is I want to use the Bing Maps tool, and I click up here. If I click right around here, it doesn't matter where I click, it's going to open up another browser tab, and it's going to show me this intersection around where I clicked. But see how this is at an angle and I can see this? The other thing within Bing Maps when you're here is that they fly these flight lines in 4 different directions. So I can see, so if I'm looking at, this building right here on the corner of Central and New Carner, I want to look at the other side of it. If I click these, I'm going to sort of come at it, and now I'm looking at it from a different angle over here, and I can sort of keep rotating this around. So that's one of the nice things you can do with Bing Maps, and if you happen to see this type of an intersection that you want to take a look at from a variety of angles. Okay, I'll close that down. The other thing we can do is we can go over here and change to Google Maps or Google Street View. So if I click along this road, essentially it's going to bring me up with Street View. And what I can do is I can, do the typical Google Street View stuff, right? So I can do that. So that's all basic functionality. But here's what I want to note on is that right now is if I were to, this is still on. See how this is yellow? A lot of the other tools are one click and they might expand a panel. So if I click again right now, it's coming up in Street View, even though maybe what I wanted to do was identify a feature, do different things. So see, notice how I have to turn that on. So I click it on, it's yellow, and I click it again to turn it off. Okay, slightly different, these two. Print map allows you to print the maps that we have right here in terms of a layout. I can put a title of the map here. I can choose my page size. I can choose file format if I want PDF or JPEG, etc. I have advanced options as to whether I want to print it exactly as I see it or do I want to print it at a given scale. I can include some other things. Do I want to include a legend or not, and so on. Or I only want to just do the map only and just do this very simple thing and export this out to a different file type. So that's the print. And notice with this one, this is the first that I've shown where it pops out a little dialogue and then you click the little arrows to collapse it. This is the base map. So if I want to turn on imagery with labels and change the underlying base map. And now I'm using my mouse here to roll it up. I got my mouse wheel. I just rolling it forward and it zooms in. And I roll it out and it zooms out. Okay, so that's a little bit about the base map. We can change base maps to any number of types of base maps, and we go back to our default, which is OpenStreetMap, and then we can collapse that. This is the layer list. We have there grouped. So we have some general layers. One of the things about the layer list that's important here, and if you look at the layers that have the eyeball with no slash through it means that that layer is checked on. Imagine these are check boxes. An eyeball with no slash through it is on. An eyeball with a slash through it means it is unchecked and is not on for display. The difference between the black and the gray text is that the light gray means that it is not within the scale threshold. We're not zoomed in close enough for it to draw. So county and streets are on just the way city and town is on, but they're scale thresholded. County is probably a scale threshold out, and streets is a scale threshold zooming in, meaning they're scale dependent. So these guys are off, but they're off because they're two different factors. We're not close enough yet, but they're off because they have a slash through it. They're unchecked. If I zoom in closer, streets is probably going to turn on. Okay, not quite yet. If I wheel this in one more time, I'm going to get close enough and streets is going to turn black and you're going to start to see the center lines. There you go. So now you're starting to see the actual street center lines on top of the base map running through it, and you have a little bit of double labeling. We label the streets as well in case you change base maps to something that doesn't have the street labels, okay? So you see street coming on, but if I wheel back out just a little bit, that turns back off. If I want to, let me zoom back in a little bit and turn streets on. If I don't want streets on, I say, okay, I don't want that on. It's sort of getting this double labeling. All I got to do is check that, and it turns to off, okay? Does everybody see that? Or I can turn that on. Okay. So that's a little bit about the layer list. This is the legend. For any visible layer, it turns on the symbology of what you're seeing. Over here, we've got area measurement. So if I wanted to just measure, the area of this block, I can turn this on over here, and I can basically start clicking around over here. And you see me digitizing a polygon. Now, when I go to close a polygon, I do not have to go back to the original point. Do not feel like you have to come back and close it by coming back to the original point. Just click the last point, and it automatically, as you see, it automatically will make a line from the point that I'm going to click and the final one. So if I click over there, okay, when I want to close a polygon, I double click on the last point. So I'm going to double click here, and that closes the polygon. It freezes the measurement at 12.77 acres. I can flip this over to, square miles, etc., whatever I want to. And then if I do a new measurement, I can start all over again. So I click over here. You got to do at least a triangle to make it a legal polygon. Double click right there, locks it in, okay? If I close that tool, it'll just remove the graphic from the screen. If I click right here, what I can do is I can go ahead and just digitize the length of a line. So if I want to digitize along these roads, I can do this, come up along here and keep going. And same thing with a polygon. To freeze and finish the line, you just double click over here, okay? Now what we got to do is I'll close that off, and the last one I'll show you is this coordinate conversion. This is a tool where if I sort of expand it, it first comes out and it's just showing you where you are over here, okay? And if you just come down here and click this particular tool here, if I click anywhere, it's going to tell me I've got it configured, and you can change the configuration over here. But I've got it configured to show the a decimal degree representation, the UTM, this is zone 18 and this X and Y coordinate, and a different version of the decimal degree notation with the north and west, and they're flipped, as you can see, instead of being minus 73, etc. This is pure decimal degrees, so to speak, and this is sort of a different representation. But anyway, so we can use that type of thing with the coordinate tool. I'm going to turn that back off. This is a little weird thing here, just to show you. When you click this, if you don't turn this off, that little point will stay there, and it always catches me. I lied. That's not the final tool. The lower right-hand corner is the full screen. So basically, the full screen that I was saying earlier. When you click that, notice how it just takes over my entire screen here. So essentially what happens is that it just takes over everything. And so don't panic. All you have to do is just hit escape to get out of that, and it just goes back to the window. So that is, I must say, that is probably one of the most underutilized tools, as I mentioned before, is that people don't use that enough. They'll sit there and say, well, we got to collapse the query form and so on. Now, this has an extra benefit with regards to the query results panel. So that's why we still include it, because it'll allow you to see more columns when we get into seeing our results. But nevertheless, having the full screen application or for the map window is huge. The other thing that we haven't done here is, I can just type 42 North Pearl Street, Albany, and notice how it automatically recognizes this, and it gives me some suggestions. So I can say, yep, that's the one in Albany that I want, and it'll go there, give you a little call out of approximately where that is, and we've got 42 North Pearl Street, etc. Okay, and I can close that out and clear that if I want. So that's a little bit about the map window. Okay, let's go back over to the slides quick. So dashboards. Dashboards is a completely different little animal within the crash data viewer, and what it allows you to do is it displays almost another little mini application for crash data viewer. Crash data viewer in and of itself allows you to do a lot of different queries and analysis. The dashboard is more what I call thematic. It's something that we pre-cook. So DOT will have the ability to build this using the built-in dashboarding capabilities and essentially publish it to you. And the one that we have that I'll show you in a moment is just a basic crash summary tool. But maybe that there's going to be a number of these that could be fatal crashes during the year, or injuries, or commercial crashes, or whatever it might be. DOT can publish these thematic dashboards, and in and of themselves, they are a separate application. It opens in another browser tab, and it really is quite powerful and robust. So this is an example of the dashboard that I'll show you here. It's fully interactive. You can click and zoom around. The map is intertwined with all of these types of graphics and info charts and so on around here. And then finally, just quickly, I'll show you what the reporting is sort of similar. You'll see that both dashboards and reports are hanging off the menu over here. So you click dashboards to get to it, report categories to get to this, and the same type of thing. You're going to have this little list of reports and dashboards that you can choose from. These are going to be tabular reports, very much a page of in a new browser tab that is a list of the crash data. So for example, maybe it's a summary of fatal crashes over the last 5 years, and it'll give you a quantity. It could be fatal crashes over the last 5 years by municipality or by county. So there'll be sorting and grouping and analysis built in the report. But at the end of the day, it's generally speaking going to be a tabular report that'll open up. So we don't have a report in the development version. We can show you sort of that type of thing. So let me hit escape and go back out here and show you what dashboards and reports looks like. So as I mentioned over here, first of all, dashboards. When we click dashboards, we have a series of categories we can do this. So we can have these groups so that we can have, this might be ultimately the fatal crash category, and this is the injury, and this is the commercial vehicle, and this is the statewide, whatever it might be. When you click inside of a category, now there's one or more dashboards that DOT can publish for you. So the one that we have here is this crash summary, and I've already opened it up because it takes a few seconds to generate all these graphics and query all the data. So this is a live example of this dashboard, and they're all interactive. So as I'm hovering over different things, it's going to tell me the stats of these bar charts and so on. So we have all these different combined bar charts. We've got pie charts, and they're all tied to the crashes that you're seeing here. So over here, we've got collision type by severity. We have different tabs across each of these little infographics. So we've got weather condition by severity, road surface condition, light condition, severity by time of year, and so on. But notice this, if I start to zoom in on this, and I zoom in so there's less, whoops, I should have, let me get out of here. Sorry about that, guys. I'll just skip that for now. But essentially what you have here is you've got the crash summary. When you click this, it launches that dashboard, and all of the different metrics that we have here. When you zoom in on the map, the corresponding infographics update, and you can actually use these infographics to filter. So you could click on this green pie chart here, and it would filter and only show you all the crashes that are in that category over here on the map. So all of these interactive pieces are dynamically linked. I'll come back to that later, but I don't want to relaunch it and waste time. That's why I launched it in advance. So sorry about that. I had left that open too long, and it wanted me to log in again. For reports, this is where you go for the reports. We don't have a report published yet, but essentially same thing. You would open up the report category. You'd have a list of reports. You click it, it would generate the report and pop it up in here in a separate browser tab. Okay. Okay, so that's a little bit about dashboards and reports. So let's go back over here to the slideshow. And let's talk about some basic queries. So really, the dashboard and reports are sort of like an auxiliary piece of functionality that we've included with all of this. But essentially what we've got here is the ability to query data is really where we're at with the crash data viewer. So let's talk about basic queries first. There are two types of queries. There is a basic query, and we use the term basic query, but it's really just a quick lookup. There's two types of lookups or searches. First, you can search for a single crash by a case number. Simple, enter the case number, you're done. If you search for a series of crashes, and this is loading from a case list file, so we can actually generate a case list file based on a query here. Within CDView, we can type in a number of case numbers if we want to, and we can just load those in. So it's really, really great for just doing a simple lookup. And then there's advanced queries, which is what you're seeing here in the interface in the screenshot. This is where you go and you initialize the query with a whole series of parameters. You specify your location, which is essentially one or more areas of interest, and you go through and you specify additional criteria. We'll get into that a little bit more right after the break. But just talking about some basic queries, let's talk about these two. So finding and searching for a single crash is very simple. When you click basic from the menu, you've got the basic query sitting here. And the first default that you have is there's two accordion panels, search for a crash and load crashes from a file. When you click search for a crash, you're going to have a case number. And you can simply input this, and then you just hit find, and it's going to find, or not, one exact crash. And you're going to see that crash record appear in the query results grid. Simple as that. Input a case number, hit find, off it goes. The second way that you can do a basic query is to search for crashes by loading a case list. So what this is this is what a case list might look like if you were looking at it in Excel, is that you've got a series of case numbers listed here, and you've got a load button here. So what you do is you just point to that file, it opens it up, it reads these case numbers, and it just pops all of those that it can find, theoretically. Hopefully you haven't made a typo in the case numbers, and it'll find them all, and it will load them into the query results. Okay, this is what the query results window looks like, and essentially what the query results are is it's a table. So in the case when you just find a single crash, you'll see one row in here. If we load multiple crashes, which I'll demo in a moment, you'll get all the crashes, one row per crash. Essentially, this is, once again, it is dynamically synced to the map. So for every row you see down here, you're going to have a point up on the map. Okay. Now, we'll come back to this in a moment, but these column headers, we're going to take a deep dive into the query results panel in a little bit, but these columns in the query results panel can be used. You can sort on these things. You can reorder these columns by dragging. You can click to sort on these. And then there's some row tools over here that we'll come up with. The row tools allow you to zoom to a crash. You can pop open the crash report. You can view the diagram and narrative for a particular crash. So access to all this stuff is available within here. And there's a whole series of more advanced grid tools at the bottom here that we'll cover in a little bit. And we have some really powerful capabilities in terms of columns and filters and so on over here that we'll talk about in a moment. The last thing that I want to talk about before I hop over to the demo is that something that we haven't really done yet because we need to see some crashes on the screen to really make use of this, is that we have the ability to just identify features on the map. The one that I turned on and off when we were doing the layer list demonstration was the street center lines, right? So I can see that. And I can, you can see them right here. And I could have clicked on one and identified the street, but you can see that on the base map. But when we start displaying crash data, that's typically the thing that people want to click on. So when you click on a crash, or any other map feature, as I said, municipal boundary, county boundary, etc., it'll display a pop-up and show you the basic attributes of that crash. So whatever we've done in terms of a query where we have fields that are showing up in the query results panel, we'll be able to see here in the pop-up window as well. I talked about a minute ago in the query results tab. Let me go back one slide here. I talked about how these row tools, and we'll come back to these in a moment and talk about them and demo them. But the row tools, this little button here will let you open up the crash report for this crash, and this will open up the diagram and narrative. Well, if I go to here, when we click on a crash point and get a pop-up window, we can get to the same things. These two buttons here are identical to the row tool in the query results grid. Finally, if we are clicking anywhere, typically we're going to be on more than one feature, meaning in this one, you can see, so it says 1 of 3. The first thing that I clicked on, sort of that's the top of the Z order, if you will, of all these layers that are on top of one another, right? The base map is on the very bottom, and we can see through all the way up through points and lines and polygons. Well, we're clicking on a crash. But if you notice, we're also probably at this zoom level, we're also going to find that road center line. So that's probably feature number 2. And then we're inside of either a municipality or a county boundary. They're typically always on. And that's probably the 3rd one. So when we click somewhere, if you clicked this next or back button, it would take you to, oh, well, here's the crash data. Oh, and then you also clicked on a street. Here's the name of the street. And oh, you also clicked inside of a municipality. So it's going to show City of Albany, for example. That's what I mean by that. And I'll demonstrate that for a moment. So let me hit escape and let's come back out here and let's go do a basic query. So for a basic query, I'm going to first start off, I'm going to cheat. I'm literally going to copy that case number because that is a real case number. And so instead of entering it, I'm just going to do this. But notice over here, what I did is I just went to the basic menu. That gives me these two accordion panels, right? Load crashes, search for a crash. And I'm going to just find this one. And I go and find, and it goes out and it quickly finds that crash. Notice I've got a point location up here on the map. And basically what I have here is I've got a single row in my query results grid, right? So with my query results grid, what we're going to do here is I'm going to be able to interact with between here. And so, for example, if I wanted to zoom to this crash into it, if I click it, it zooms me right into the crash. It highlights this guy in orange, and we also see that point highlight in orange. What I can do here is I can open up the crash report, and I am you saw me flip to this when I was closing the dashboard earlier, but to be sensitive to crash reports, I have already pre-opened a dummy crash report. So when you click this button, this is what opens. We get the crash report viewer little sub application of CDV that opens up in a separate browser tab. So sort of the three things that open in a separate browser tab are the crash reports themselves, a tabular report that I was showing you from the report categories, like, showing a summary of fatal crashes by year, by municipality, or what have you, and the dashboards. So they all open in separate browser tabs. And this is the little crash report viewer. So you can see where I can scroll up and down. Don't worry, this is not sensitive data. This is all made up. You can see it's John Johnson from Somewhere Drive and so on. But just to show you the mechanics of this is that I can zoom around on this. I've got zoom controls. If it's multi-pages, I can click next and go to page 2, go back previous to page 1. If there are multiple reports for this crash, maybe there's a motorist report, maybe there is a police report, maybe there is an amendment, all of them will be here. So it might be an MV104, an MV104A, et cetera, right? If you're familiar with the different crash reports and so on that are submitted both by motorists and law enforcement, this is a MV104A right here, okay? So this is a very powerful viewer. So this is being drawn live right from the database, as I mentioned. And so this is really a key piece here to being able to know that I am one click away when I'm looking at this crash to being able to see the full crash report or reports. The other thing to notice about this is that I also can just quickly get to the diagram and narrative part of this. So if I click this this button, it pops open. This comes up in a dialogue, and this once again is just bogus stuff here. So you'd see the officer's notes up here, and you'd also see the diagram here of vehicle 1 and vehicle 2 colliding here, right? So this is all how you would get at some of the more detailed information. So these three row tools, as we call those, are how you get to the diagram and the narrative, okay? As well as the crash report itself, okay? These grid tools that I'm talking about here, there's grid tools down here, but these column tools are not necessarily in your face. You have to just know that they're there. So for example, what can I do? Well, I can resize these columns by just clicking in the little divider and shrinking things and being able to make more things fit. So when I hover over a divider, I can stretch and shrink that column, okay? The other thing I can do is let's say that I wanted to have the crash type be the first column that I saw over here. You can't really affect these guys. These guys are locked. This is a selectable tool and so on. But if I click and press and hold my mouse button inside of a column header, I can drag this over and make it the first column. Or I could grab case number and move it over a couple, right? So that's another thing that we can do. We can also sort and filter on records, which I'll do in a moment once I load more than one record. So that is the, I'll come back to a couple things here in a moment, but that is the search for a crash to find a single crash, okay? And if you click the reset button, it'll reset this and clear that, okay? What if I wanted to load a case list? Now down here later, we'll talk about how we can export data to a case list. So what is a case list? It's simply a list of crash numbers, okay? It's a list of crash numbers or case numbers that have been either exported from the crash data viewer, maybe you typed them in or so on. Now, what's the value in this? So let's do a use case here. Let's say that you just did this very complicated query and you did this very sophisticated area of interest. You'll see in a minute where I'm going to allow you to build a path. So maybe you digitized a line, a route between this street corner and another street corner, and it built a path. And you used that, and then you did this other sophisticated filter by criteria with, K&A crashes and light conditions and so on and so forth. And you came up with a list of 24 crashes or something, and you wanted someone else to be able to go through that list of crashes and look and see if the crash data is accurate, if the location is accurate, if the data, collision types and severities and so on are accurate, or if any of these need to be edited. And we'll go through that use case in a little bit. That's why maybe what you'd want to do is save a case list and just allow them to reopen a case list, right? So you literally could save a case list, email it to somebody and say, hey, I just did this query. There's 24 crashes here. Can you open it up and look at these? So let's say someone just did that they did a query, they saved a case list, and they emailed it to me. What I can do here is go, all right, great. I'm going to click load, and I'm going to get a dialog. And here's a CSV file right here. I'm going to open up demo. I'm double clicking, and it just loaded a list of 13 cases. And basically what you see here is I've got a list of all the records. You can see there's total records 13. Here is the data associated with these. The 13 cases are being shown up on the map. And what it does is whenever you load multiple cases, either from this or you do any type of advanced query where you're actually querying the data, is that all the different points that are rendered here, the map zooms to the geographic extent of all the points that are found, okay? Now, it might not look like there's 13 cases here because it's possible that cases that are at intersections, there might be a bunch of points on top of one another, okay? And I'll click with the identify tool in a moment. But coming back down here to the grid, now we get into some interesting things like, okay, so once again, I showed you how we can drag things around. Well, what might I be able to do else? Well, I could come over here and I see, collision type. Well, geez, I'd like to sort this by collision type. So if I just click in the column header, notice what it does. It just sorted. I just clicked anywhere in this column header and it sorted by an ascending order of collision type. If I click it again, it flips it around and it sorts it again in descending order of collision type. Okay, so that's how I can sort a column. Maybe I only want to filter these. Notice down here in the lower left where I've got total records 13, that my criteria, if you will, and I'm putting this in air quotes literally with my hand because I didn't really specify any advanced query. I just did a load case numbers from a case list. But I have 3 others, and maybe I want to focus on those. So maybe what they sent me is they did this query, they saved the case list, and they said, hey, Larry, can you open this up and look at these and pay particular attention to others because we might need to change the collision type for those. So I could say, all right, great. And I want to focus on those. So if I click this little, there's a couple of things here that you can see here. There's this, I'm sorry, I just clicked and sorted again. This little guy here allows you to pin columns and pin them to the left, to the right. I can auto size columns. We can group things, and I'll come back to this in a moment over here when we get to here. But what I was going to click on here is the filtering tool as well. So I could filter, and notice that it knows all the unique values that are here, and they're all checked by default. But if I want to only filter down and show the others, I'm going to click and unselect all, and you notice now I have no records here. And if I just turn on just other, now it shows me those, and the filter is observed up in the map display. So now what I'm doing here is I've got only those 3. So if you look in the lower left here, it says total records are 13. That's how many came back from my query, quote unquote, right? But I filtered down to only seeing 3, and those are the 3 crashes I have up there. So now I want to walk through these 3 crashes and just start to analyze these and see if that makes sense. So how might I do that? Well, I might click this little zoom in tool and zoom to this guy, and I can see him, and maybe I want to expand the map so I can drag this little horizontal bar here, press and hold my mouse button, and I can increase the size of this, or I can click either of these I can click the little down arrow to minimize it. I can click the up arrow, or I could click the up arrow entirely and completely maximize the grid. So these little arrows that are maybe a little bit hard for you to see allow you to manipulate all this, and this is a dynamic resizing. So now I'm looking at this. So I've zoomed to this guy, and that's great. And maybe I want to click on the diagram and narrative and read what the officer really said. And I go, oh, you know, as I'm looking like this, I don't think this is an other for collision type. I think it's something else. And I'll show you later, we'll come back, how we can add these to what we call the DOT queue that will allow DOT to get a request from you to say, hey, change the collision type from other to rear end. Or hey, could you move this crash 50 feet down the road so it's closer to that intersection? It's right around the corner of X and X, right? So we can do those types of things. But this is a use case of why you might be given a case list by somebody, or you create a case list for yourself to come back to and look at a later date. So now once again, let me go and zoom to the next crash. So the other is over here, right? So I click that one, it highlights, and I'm going to look at this one. And once again, to just show you the identify tool, if I click on that crash, sometimes the little pop-up when you make the map a little bit smaller will slide off the map. You can see here how I've got a series of attributes here: case number, case year, collision type, traffic control, all this data associated with the crash that is here. Now notice it says 1 of 7. So if I go to 2, okay, I'm identifying the street as Madison Avenue. Okay, 3 is also the Madison Avenue. So we're looking at a couple of different things from the intersection inventory and so on. And also now we're also right at a corner. So now it's saying, well, you're also at a corner. So I also identified the crossing street, which is South Swan. It's also referred to in our routes as US 20 and so on. And we got westbound and eastbound lanes because we have reverse directions in our very sophisticated linear referencing system and so on. So anyways, that's that identify tool I was talking about. And I'm panning the map right now. Notice when I press and hold the mouse, the little icon looks like a hand, like I'm grabbing the map. So I'm holding the mouse as I'm doing this, and now I let up, and that's where it ends up being. So if I want to pan to the left, I drag the map to the right. So I press and hold my mouse, drag it towards the right, and it recenters the map, and now I can see further to the left, to the west, okay? So anyway, that's just a little bit circling back on a few of those things, okay? And then finally, maybe I want to zoom to the last point in my little case list here, and I see, okay, that looks good that we're here on this particular crash, and it does or it doesn't need any editing, whatever the case might be. Now, to clear the filters, we can do a couple different things. So I'm filtered on right here, and you can see the collision type. I'm going to just drag this up a little bit so you can see this higher. So I'm currently filtered on this. So a couple ways I could clear the filters. First of all, I could come over here and I could just check select all. Okay, that essentially clears the filters, and now I'm back looking at 13. The other thing that I could do is, instead of doing that, I'm going to go back and filter by other again. Notice how I did that. I also can come down here, and you can see there's a little grid tool down here that I'll come back to called clear filters. What is the difference between this and this? When I do this and I start to clear a filter over here, this is clearing just this filter. I could have several filters going, but this guy clears all filters. So if I click that clear filters, it will clear the filters, but if I had 3 on 3 different columns, it would clear them all. Okay, and I'll come back to that later. But that's how we manipulate that. The other thing I wanted to point out here is, once I start displaying multiple crashes here, what happens is that when I'm zoomed out far enough where it can't show me the exact location of crashes, and if I'm going to zoom out a little bit farther and show you how this dynamic, what we call clustering, looks like. This is clustering. So when we are displaying point data, a lot of times, and this isn't even that bad with 13, you'll see I'm going to do a query with about 900 in a little bit. When we start looking at a large number of crashes, we can't show the points all at a zoomed out scale because it's just going to be a big blob of colors. And so what we do instead is we cluster them and we show you, hey, look, there's about 9 crashes in this general vicinity, and there's about 4 over here. As I zoom in, I'm just going to wheel in a little bit. You can see where I got, all right, it broke the 9 up into, whoops, sorry, I didn't hold my serve here. it broke the 9 up and it's showing 8 over here, and then it's actually showing 1 exact location here. And this 4 did the same thing. I got 3. I'm going to wheel in a little bit closer, and now it's showing me the exact locations of the crashes, okay? But as I zoom out, if I kept zooming out, if I keep zooming out and there's 13, I'm going to probably just see a 13 here in a minute. There we go. So if I zoom out to this level, it just collapses them all and just says there's 13 around here. Wheel it in, 12 and 1, wheel it in, 9 and 4. Okay, so that's how clustering goes, 7 and 2 up here, and so on. So that's the way the crashes look. But if you do click zoom, it will take you directly to a particular crash and jump you into a good zoom level. Okay, so that is a little bit about basic queries. So that's basic queries. That's searching for a single crash, loading crashes from a case list. I will tell you later, we'll come back to this, but I'll just, I'll show you these tools down here. This is the export results. We'll come back to this later, but if you're wondering, how do I save a case list? After I do a big query, I can literally export to a case list right here. It'll prompt you for a file name and you'll be able to go from there. So that's how you generate a case list. This is how you load a case list. So you can save one for yourself. Now, the other way that we'll come back to, and this is my last comment, and then we're going to end up taking a break here in a second, is you'll notice that basically what we're going to get into is that what we have the ability to do is save a query and save a case list. So there's different ways I can share this with people. I can save a query. I'll come back to that at the end of the towards the end of the training course, and you could open up the query and rerun it and get the same cases. Or I could save a case list, which is just a list of the case numbers, and load it this way. Either way is perfectly fine. Okay. Last couple slides before we take our break here. So we're going to get into advanced queries. So advanced queries essentially is a way that you get into some really robust ways of truly querying. What I just did in terms of a case list and searching for a query, that's hardly a query, right? It's just finding some cases. This is the power. This is where you're going to spend 98% of your time in CDV. So querying in an advanced sense is really a 3-step process. So step 1, and we literally walk you through here. When you step 1 is to do a initialize. Now, initialize is just a place where we put a bunch of general parameters. So what we have here is we have the ability to define a date range, which is basically it defaults to a date range, defaults to a 3-year period, and we can change these. Crash focus. This is what is the universe of crashes we're going to query? Do you want to query them all within this date range? Do you want to query only those that are at or intersection related? So this would only look at intersection related crashes. So crashes that, an intersection related means, crash that might occur 40 feet before the intersection, but it was because they rear-ended somebody because they came around the corner and they didn't realize there was a stop sign there, and they hit their brakes and slammed into somebody because it was icy or whatever. That's an intersection related crash. It doesn't have to be at the intersection geographically. It's intersection related. That's where we get into things like our area of influence polygon and so on. Or do you want non-intersection crashes, only those that occurred along, quote unquote, the main line of the road network? Okay, so intersection related crashes only, not intersection related crashes along a main line, or all. That's the focus. What universe are we querying? The query level is how many records per crash are we going to get returned in our query results window. So we're always querying for crashes, right? We're querying the criteria and the area of interest. We're going to look at the location of the crash. We're going to look at the characteristics of the crash or the characteristics of the vehicles or the persons involved, etc. Once we say it's these 5 crashes that we have found, how many records are coming back in the query results window? If I pick crash for my level, I get 1 record per crash. If I choose vehicle, I get 1 record per vehicle per crash. And person, if I choose that, I'm going to get 1 record for each person in each vehicle within the crash, so to speak. So this almost could say per vehicle per crash. But so for example, if I choose person and I come up with these 5 crashes, and each of the 5 crashes has 2 vehicles, and each of those vehicles only had 1 person, the driver in that, okay, I would get, if I choose crash, I'm going to get 5 records back, 1 for each crash. If I chose vehicle, I'm going to get 10 records back, 1 for each vehicle, 2 vehicles per crash. And if I chose person, I would get 10 back, 10 persons per the 10 vehicles per crash. If there were 2 people in every one of those cars, I'd get back 20 records if I chose person. 2 persons for each of the 2 vehicles, which there's total of 10 per the 5 crashes, right? So that's what we're talking about here. And then result fields are what fields, what columns do I want to come back in the results grid? Okay, so basically what that allows you to do is say, I want, in addition to these 5 core fields, you have to take these 5, okay? They are by default, they are always on, but you have the ability to say, I want these crash fields, I want these person fields, these vehicle fields, and we'll talk about that. We'll come back to this checkbox at the bottom in a minute. But that is what step 1 looks like, okay? When you customize the result fields, basically you'll get a dialog that looks like this. And so when you pop up this dialog, you have the ability to check individual crashes, and they're grouped by category, like basic crash details, extended crash details. When you start setting vehicle and person as your level, you'll see other fields. You can't choose vehicle fields unless you're returning a record per vehicle, so they are context sensitive. When you want to choose, let's say that I said, I just want all the basic crash details, I can check off this basic crash details button icon, and it will automatically check or uncheck all of these. And at the very bottom here, what you have the ability to do is you can reset to the default. That resets to the current default. Now, what I mean by to the current default is, let me go over to set as default. If you say, every time I do a crash, I want the basic crash details, every time, I don't want to have to come here and click it. You click that button, checks all these, click set as default. It will save that in your profile, if you will, and every time you do a crash, these are your defaults. All of them are here because you set it as default. So now what the reset to default button means is that if a minute ago we came in here and we checked off a few of these as well, and then I go, no, I want to go back to my default, I can reset to default with my next query, and my current default is all of these because I set it. That's what it would reset to. Unselect all is different than reset to default in that it unselects all the fields and all the groups. It ignores your default and takes you down to the system default, which is just these few fields here. Okay, so that's the difference. So before we get into location, let me just quickly go and I'm going to go and show you the advanced query. So I'm going to go over here to advanced. I'm going to switch from the basic menu to the advanced menu, and I'll take you through how we do all this. So I'm going to just accept the date range here, but I could change this if I wanted to change this to October 6th, something like that. I can do that. I'll leave it at the default, but I have date pickers. I can type in here, whatever. I'm going to leave this set to all, and I'm going to leave it set to crash for a simple way, but these are single click buttons. Notice that when I click one of these, it changes the default fields. So there are more default fields when you do a vehicle crash. We give you at least the vehicle sequence number, okay? But I'm going to leave it at crash, and then I'm going to go and customize my result fields here. Okay, so I'm going to customize my result fields, and this is basically the dialog I was showing you earlier. So if I wanted to have all the basic crash details, once again, I can check that, but this is a scrollable dialog, and I could go and choose some other crash location details. I could choose some road characteristic details. I could change check off contributing factor, like what's the apparent contributing factor, but I'll stay with just basic crash details and hit OK. So this list now is much longer. This is my default fields. Now, what happens when you're done with step 1? When you're done with step 1, you just hit next and you go to step 2. Step 2, if I go back to the PowerPoint, is the location. And the location is basically a way of defining one or more areas of interest. One or more areas of interest. And an area of interest is basically a closed boundary that we are going to select based on the location of the crash. So locations of crashes that fall within at least one of these areas of interest will meet the criteria of this query. Okay, but an AOI must be a closed boundary, and therefore you're going to denote that there's several different ways. There's 5 different ways we can create an area of interest. We can draw a graphic, We can build a path along a roadway, doing an origin and a destination, and it will automatically route you. We can select features such as MPO boundaries, municipality boundaries. We can select from the area of influence polygon from this master intersection layer, and we can import polygons from a shapefile. As we add areas of interest, we can add as many as we want. They'll show up in this grid, and a valid query has to have at least one. But one of the things that you'll notice here is that some of these AOI methods, like drawing a graphic, I might just click a point. I have to buffer them to turn them into a polygon or closed boundary before I do this, okay? So this is what location is. So let me just escape there, and I'm on step 2, and I'm going to do something very basic here. I'm going to zoom out here for a minute. And you can ignore, I've got the latest results up here, but that's okay. I don't have to do this. As a matter of fact, I'll show you a tool. I can remove all records if I want from there, if that makes you feel better. But it doesn't matter. The records that may already be sitting in the query results panel, it doesn't matter. So if I wanted to zoom in here around, say, Central Ave here, I'm going to do a simple AOI. I'm going to go to the draw accordion panel. I'm going to draw a rectangle, and I'm just going to do here. Okay, doesn't make a lot of sense, but you can. Now notice when I draw this, I don't have an AOI yet. When I have something by drawing or selecting a feature, whatever, I then have to click Add to AOI. So I click that green button and it adds it up here, and I have an area of interest. That's all I need. I need at least one. Each of these accordion panels will take you through after the break, and there's different ways to do this. The next, and I'll go back to the slides for 1 second, and we'll execute this query in a minute, and we'll take our break. The last step is criteria. This is optional. You don't have to specify any criteria, but this allows you to choose from crash characteristics, vehicle characteristics, persons, etc., contributing factors, and add to an additional level of filtering beyond just the location to say, well, I only want fatal crashes or serious injury crashes or what have you. So basically, step 3 allows you to define this. And then this execute button in the lower right, when you've defined, I'm sorry, this is the what all those panels look like, and I'll take you through those in a moment, but these are the crash characteristics and vehicle. These are all the things we can query by. And finally, that last button in the lower right corner of the of step 3 allows you to execute the query. And it's going to run the query as defined, and it's going to select the crashes where a crash location falls within at least one area of interest that we defined in step 2, and not an or, and the crash characteristics meet all of your criteria that you specified, some of which was back in step 1, right? Is it an intersection related crash or, what have you, the date ranges, etc. And in step 3, maybe you chose severity of, fatal only or fatal and serious injury or whatever. The resulting crashes are displayed on the map. You can see our clustering going on here, and the records are down here. The number of records to get back are based on that query level we identified. Remember, crash, vehicle, or person. And then the columns are going to be whatever we chose as the result fields. Okay, so let me interrupt that, and let's actually execute this query. So I've got, I set my location. So once again, if I go back through I initialize, I got a 3-year period. I customize result fields. I go next. I define my area of interest as this polygon. Next, and let's say I'm going to go to crash characteristics, and I only want fatal and serious injury as my crashes here. I'll hit execute. It's executing the query. And, within this polygon, I guess I didn't make it big enough. I'm going to turn these guys off instead of that, and I'm just going to grab all the crashes in this area over the 3-year period. So now I've got 90. Sorry about that. So I've got 90 crashes that fall within, I don't have any refining criteria here, and I used one AOI. Here's the 90 crashes, and basically what we have here is the ability to go through, once again, and walk through every one of these crashes and see where they are. Now, one thing that I wanted to point out here is that we're currently trying to look through our area of interest here. If I go to my layers, I can actually turn the area of interest off temporarily if I want, so that I can see through, and we made it transparent on purpose, but I can turn that off. The other thing that I wanted to do here, though, is just show you on the symbology, is that as we go through here, when we do a query, we are by default symbolizing the crashes based on their severity. So we can see that fatals will be red. I don't see any within here. Injuries are yellow. Property damage and injuries are sort of bright green, and PDO, property damage only, are sort of this darker green, and anything that's other will be gray. Okay, so we are in fact symbolizing the crashes, and I'm going to turn my areas of interest polygon back on here so you can see the query extent. And once again, as I zoom out, it's going to start clustering the crashes. I zoom in, it starts turning them back on, and so on, and I can walk through all my crashes and so on. So that's the quick example of being able to talk through the major components. So that's sort of a quick introduction to the advanced query. When we come back from break, what I'm going to do is we're going to talk about how we can get into a deeper dive, and we're going to talk a lot more details about everything you can do with an advanced query. So it is 10:22. So why don't we take we'll take a 13-minute break. We'll round it up to 12, 13 minutes here. If everybody could come back, and I'm going to start right at 10:35. That'll give us a little bit longer than a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back here, and I'm going to start it up. Andrew, if you could stop the recording or pause the recording so we break it up into two parts, that would be great. And then we'll come back at 10.